take you through what happened here.
I'm the girl on the news. Well, I guess now I'm the girl off the news. So welcome. This is my story.
Right now behind me.
I've lived a really cool life the last 8 years. Before we get into why this podcast exists, let's take you through where I've been and how this all ties in. When I left 8 years ago, I traveled 3,000 miles to California. I landed in San Francisco and I was so excited. I had no clue what San Francisco had in store for me. I went with an idea that I was going to do some summer classes at Stanford University, and then I was going to go on and do my PhD. Well, boy, did life have a different journey for me. Through a friend of a friend, I got this really cool interview at CBS Radio, and I had no business being in news. And that's actually what my first boss said to me. He said, I have no business being in news. And while he probably was right, I said to him, my work ethic will speak for itself. When I got to news, I walked into a place that I, for the first time, was like, wow, this is what the inside of my brain looks like. It is wild. People are running around. It is crazy. And it was perfect. This is where I wanted to work.
Joe, still a very active scene out here.
So for the next 7 years after, that's what I did. I learned everything I could about news, but I started at the bottom. I was very fortunate to meet some pretty cool people who took a shine to me and said, you might want to try on camera. And to be real, I did not want to be in front of the camera. I did not have a presence. I did not have schooling. This was not something I was going to do. I took a leap of faith and I said, why not?
She joins us live from Reading, Paulina.
So I put a reel together.
Good evening, Cecile. Excuse me.
And I was terrible at first.
Lucky kid tonight, and
not gonna lie.
Later, and this incident could have ended very
I think
bad.
my brother used the words deer in headlights when describing the first times that I would go live on TV. He was accurate. San Francisco gave me the best foundation I could have to go on into a news career that has been pretty successful, or at least in my opinion, successful.
Alan, it was media day today.
I got my first job on air reporting in Reading, California, and I was a fish out of water. I had gone from a fully functioning newsroom where we had every resource available to us to a small market with zero resources. I had TVs in the background, 2 TVs in a makeshift studio in a closet, basically. It was phenomenal and terrible all at the same time. I had no clue what I was getting myself into, let's put it that way. A few months in, I knew that I needed more hands-on experience and more training. I was very aware that I was so green and I was so inexperienced in my craft that I needed somebody else's guidance. So I reached out to a boss that I had interviewed with and who I had gotten an offer with and turned him down. And in the middle of doing my makeup, on the floor, he says, I could look at your stuff or I can give you a job offer. And so as I'm doing my makeup, I was like, are you shitting me? Is this the real job offer or what is this? And he's like, no, how quickly can you get here? I wasn't under contract. So I packed up my stuff and said, give me 2 weeks. I need to put in a notice and then give me a week to get there. I drove cross country with a U-Haul and my little Toyota Yaris hitched to the back of it. What an experience, guys. I slept in the Arizona deserts. I slept in some really, really janky and kind of scary motels in that journey. And then I finally landed in Lafayette, Louisiana. And I was greeted with the biggest rains I had ever seen in my life. It was like heaven's gates had opened up and decided we're going to flood you. So that was my introduction to Lafayette, Louisiana.
And we even cook the fly swatter.
The what?
The what? Fly swatter.
The who?
The fly swatter of the top.
I remember my first conversations with my mom when I got to Louisiana and I said, I have found home. I love Louisiana. I spent nearly 3 years doing some of the coolest things I had ever done in my life.
Another levee breaching gate on Louisiana. Roads are being washed away.
All of a sudden, I found myself up telling some really incredible stories, and my day in the office looked nothing like most people's.
That is a Black Hawk.
All right, let's be real. It wasn't a Black Hawk that I got into. It was a Chinook, and you know what? It was just as awesome. I got to see flooding like I've never seen before.
What residents are doing to prepare for Hurricane Harvey.
I got to chase hurricanes, tornadoes, and I put myself into a lot of situations now that I think back on that were really dangerous. Especially now that I'm sitting back and sitting at home in my apartment in Albany, New York, watching these incredible friends who I started off with, who were also starting out in news, now have these incredible careers in Louisiana, all across the border. They've done a phenomenal job covering Hurricane Ida, which has been devastating, and even more devastating now watching it and realizing the danger they are all in. But again, I sit here and I watch in pride, knowing that I've known these people on such a different and more personal level. When my time in Louisiana was over, I ran with the horses to Kentucky. And full disclosure, I hate horse racing, so what was I thinking? But I had a time in Kentucky. I can't say that I loved it. I can't say that I've hated it. I had made a jump that was incredible and remarkable in terms of my career.
All right, y'all, we are just a couple of minutes away from the big game, Penn State versus the Big Blue Nation.
I was afforded many opportunities, like going out within the first month of my time starting in Kentucky, going out to Florida and covering the Citrus Bowl. And if anybody knows me, they know I know nothing or next to nothing about sports, maybe just the shape of the ball. That's about it.
Well, you'll meet her in just a moment.
Life was not always pretty. And even on camera, there were lots of fumbles and a lot of learning curves. I had some of the most profound moments of my career in Kentucky.
They say a photo speaks 1,000 words.
At first, they were pulling up the response and officers outnumbered really bad.
What do 3 photos say?
As I was living them, I knew it was history in the making.
They kind of linked arms and got off.
Thursday night, Louisville watched as peaceful protests turned violent.
While I chased every story, I was there with you. I was there holding the hands of those crying. I was in the middle of social justice protests and being in the middle of a newsroom that was getting attacked during those social justice moments, social justice protests. It was terrifying and yet exhilarating. I knew it was history in the making, but I couldn't quite find a way to connect. And I couldn't quite find a way to be present. I couldn't quite find a way to be me. You know, I left Louisiana engaged, excited about an upcoming wedding.
She's beautiful, she's married. Like literally, I was like, she's beautiful, she's married. It's like typical woman jealousy. I'm like, what's so wrong in her life? And I think that just goes back to like, I had no idea what was going on in her home.
I left Louisiana with a lot of different
I'm gonna do my little snow shimmy.
things happening.
Shame was built into that, right?
Right. Like that shame was there. Like, you know, even as an adult, I had this moment of shame. My mother wasn't talking to me when I came out to her, right? Like there was that shame. There was the shame of I'm on TV, I'm living in the South. And I had nasty comments of people and viewers writing in. When I got to Kentucky, it wasn't pretty. That excitement very quickly died down. I wasn't happy at the job. And then like there's other issues behind the scenes at work that people don't see that just were never resolved or didn't get resolved until many months later. And then when those finally got resolved, I was kind of, okay, like I'm breathing, I'm good. But my home life was ramping up and it was worse and worse and worse. I didn't have the friends that I wanted at the time. And not anybody else's fault but my own, honestly. The behind the scenes, when the camera was off and nothing was rolling, that's where the truth lies.
Like I can go back to that moment right now. Like that heart, like I just, no. Like Paulina, run now. Because it brought me back to when I had my head cracked open.
And there was a deep reality and a dark reality. And you were actually the first person, one of 2 people that I contacted when I was in the hospital 2 years ago now almost, When my nose was broken in my relationship that many never knew. When it was time to go, I came back to New York City, a place I said I would never come back to.
When you come home, everyone thinks you're going to be thrilled, like you've been exiled and you're, been let out of prison and you're so happy to be back. And it wasn't the case.
So here I am, finding myself back here and having to face a lot of stuff. There's been tumultuous moments between myself, my brother, my mom, everybody, it kind of ruffles feathers. And you had a similar situation in life where you left the country and then had to come back to the country. And you are now living in Oakland, California. And you were not totally okay with being back in Oakland. There were a lot of times on my journey in the last 8 years that were not pretty. In fact, there were many moments I thought that would literally kill me. When I finally broke down in Louisiana, and you were the friend who would come, on my door, knocking on my door on Saturday, and I just would try and drink myself to sleep and just, smoke as much weed as I could and just forget the world. And I didn't want to live. You'd be the one coming to my house to say, get your ass out of the house, get in the car, we're going for a drive. Things that never made it on TV. 10 years ago, before this entire journey started, I was living in New York City and I was happily dating somebody who I thought would become my husband. I was happily, gleefully in a relationship that was healthy. And I was in a very happy place in my life. There was a lot of things happening that were incredible. And then
I really didn't want you to go in, but you were a little stubborn.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
So I did go into the house, right? I went in. My brother went in, my ex-boyfriend went in. The three of us went in alone because this was after we had come back from the police station.
Right.
And I remember going into that room and the room was angry. The unpredictable happened. My father used a double-barrel shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
So I will let your own, mind take you to where it needs to go to kind of go into that room. His death propelled me on a journey. And in a way, I guess I ran away to California. And then when things got tough in California, I ran away to Louisiana. And then in Louisiana, I was afforded the opportunity to run again to Kentucky until I could no longer run or outrun myself. And here we are.
What's key is that during those moments, you find the lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because things repeat in your life until you find the lesson. And that's okay, because that's a part of the journey. So I can't even really say I had one moment, but one thing that I do is when I get up, I make a decision every morning when I get up, whether it's during my meditation, before I start work, before I start my workout, whatever it is, I make it, I sit in myself and within myself, and I'm like, this is who I am today.
I have a tattoo on my arm that says, not all who wander are lost. And I think it's a perfect description of who I am. I have been wandering for the last 8 to 10 years trying to find myself, following my dad's suicide. And there have been some pretty remarkable moments, life-altering moments since then, and moments that I wish I could say weren't as hard as his death, but I'd be lying if I said that. I ended up Googling a trauma specialist because I'm like, I'm fucked up. Like, that's it. Like, I'm crying all the time. I'm going into work. I'm sitting in the parking lot and I'm bawling my eyes out for an hour before I'm even walking into the building. For a long time, I would tell myself I wasn't running away. For a long time, I would tell myself that I'm okay. And I didn't cry. And then I landed on my mother's couch in New York City 8 years later. living in my brother's house with no income, no job, no marriage, feeling like a complete loser. My mental health took a hit, and I had to take a really deep dive into who the hell I was. Because clearly something was not working for me in this last 8 years.
Voorheesville family is happy tonight that their missing pet.
When I got my job in Albany, I thought this was going to be the thing, this restart from Kentucky, this next move that I needed to take, this moment that would be so life defining and I can continue on in my job. And it wasn't. It was a lot of things that I'd faced before with a very new mentality that I took on that said, no more abuse, no more mental abuse, no more emotional abuse, no more gaslighting, no more doing what I don't want to do.
When I shared that news with a lot of my friends, some of them looked at me and were like, she's gone off the deep end. That's it. Like, she has lost every marble that she had left. She's been on this job hunt for a couple of months now. She got the job, didn't like it. She's lost it all. She's out there in the water.
Well, Lena, a lot of people thought that with me to walk away from, the best anchor job in town.
I just simply said, enough is enough. And it's time to start telling the truth and start telling stories that I think matter.
It's hard enough to feel like you're failing. To talk about it is like, and it really does become a mental trauma just to carry it out with you all the time and to appear to the world like everything is perfect.
Let's talk a little bit about the trauma that you went through that you were talking about, because I think for anybody listening, anybody who is watching, we do get stuck in those cycles of we are ambitious and we have a goal and we know we want to reach it, and there's nothing stopping us in the way until life gets in the way, until some of the choices that we make get in our own way. And then I think ego gets in the way as well. Yeah. In the last 8 years, here's what I have learned. I have met some pretty incredible people.
The clock doesn't stop for you. It just keeps going.
Right.
So then you have to be like, well, I gotta be kind of like a goldfish. Goldfish have very limited memories.
Who along the journey have been so supportive of my journey and my struggles. Every last one of those struggles that I found myself in, whether it was adapting to a new city, struggling with my dad's suicide and my own emotions and finally grieving them, or my marriage and the ups and downs, the abuse. So I set out and took all these fellow wanderers with me and said, hey, let's start a podcast.
This shit is serious, right? Like, it's so isolating, and
it's very serious. And I spent like when we finally got back together at work, I talked to like a lot of people who I hadn't seen in more than 18 months. And the first thing they talked about was their mental health. They were like, we're still not in a good place. We're still having issues.
Let's talk about the things that you have been through and the things that I have been through, the things that make us human.
I started writing. That's how I started coming up with different ideas. Like, I just started editing again. I started working in After Effects and doing motion graphics just to do it. And some of the stuff I made, I was like, ooh, I was really mad. Bad decision. And then I started looking at the stuff I do now and I'm like, wow, yeah, a difference. That's how I see how I kind of worked my anger. When I'm negative, I'm like, all right, I'm kind of a cool and calm negative person. I'll just be like, well, that's just the way it is. That's as negative as I get nowadays. It used to be, oh, well, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens. And I'm now like, well, that's the way it is. We'll find a way to get
now
there.
I get messages from you weekly, uplifting messages, reminding me to be happy. That is not an Anthony that I know. That is an Anthony that I love. Because you know what? It's these nitty gritty things that I realized make us human.
I think ambition is so innocent. It's just something you want to do until something happens along the way that stops you from doing it. And then ambition becomes almost like a label, like a weight you carry on your shoulders, because you look at everything through that spectrum. Like, this is where I want to be. This is what is stopping me. It becomes an endless circle of how do you circumvent these things that are on the way, that are stopping you from being where you want to be, from loving your family the way you want to love them, from being generous to your friends the way you want to be.
It's these stories that are so hard to tell.
You know, one day my dad would walk in and be like, I love you guys. You're my world. And he'd be kissing my mom and kissing us. And the next day walk in and just fucking break every piece of furniture, beat the fuck out of his kids. And we just don't even know. So we never knew which dad was going to walk in. We just didn't know. You know, my father would have these tantrums at times where he would lock us out of the house.
It's these stories that we shut out and we run away from for years.
But once you snap out of it and you reconstruct yourself, you could be like, yeah, I was in an abusive relationship. He used to hit me and I am good. But when somebody plays with your confidence and with your intelligence and with yourself, your sense of self, that's what gaslighting is. Somebody that looks at you and tells you, really? And honestly, really? Is that what really happened? It makes you think that you're crazy.
And so here we are talking about mental health, something that so often people are terrified to talk about, the stigma.
We talk about survivors of this practice, but there also really are victims, and it's hard to ever know who those victims are because, again, there's so much shame surrounding them. So it's not like the families are going to come out and say, oh, you know, my kid was in conversion therapy and then you know, committed suicide.
The ugliness.
That's exactly what he said to our children. Your mom is breaking up our family. There's something wrong with her. She is breaking up our family. We're fine. And I'm like, but I'm not fine. Because I wasn't fine at all.
You weren't fine. And
no, of course not.
So many of us who get stuck in these relationships that are with narcissists or with people who brainwash you or people who just gaslight you, you know, really, these are words that up until now, I don't think I've ever spoken them. I don't think that even in my relationship, I'm vocal to say that, like, yes, I'm a victim of abuse. Yes, I'm a victim of, I'm a suicide survivor, but gaslighting and narcissism are still words that I'm like learning to be okay with saying for whatever reason. But you know what? If I never told these people my story, I would have never known theirs. And they helped me. And I know in telling my story, I helped them in ways I never thought I would.
We think that we're making ourselves vulnerable when we share a story. I think we're much more vulnerable if we don't. You know, because we are not as strong inside, because we have to keep our, force fields up.
So I'm hoping that by telling their stories, it helps you, like it has me. My hope for the future is that this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It's about accepting every day as a new start, as a new day, giving thanks for the day and just saying, this is who I am today.
I'm Paulina Bootska, and I'm a little fucked up. And you know what? That's okay.
Wake up heart and wake up mind. See the world is yours to find, and with every passing day there's more calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free. Meant to be free.